I'm Lev Nelik, Pumping Machinery. Today is January 21st, 2014. We'll do two experiments now. One is we're going to throttle the suction to the pump by the intake valve. And the second one, we'll put the vacuum on top of the tank. And we'll see how it changes the pump operations. What we have here is a tank filled up to here approximately, supplying a pump. There's actually two pumps in the system, but one is valved out. This is pump number 2, which is connected to the tank through a hose with a suction gauge, with isolation valve, which is open. And pump number 1 is now isolated off, and it's not even plugged. So we have a 2-pump system with only 1 pump effectively used for this experiment, for this example. The pump will take suction from the tank, it'll go to a discharge hose, we'll turn around, go through a flow meter, and then isolation valve is open, you'll come back into the same tank. When we put the vacuum on the tank, we'll turn a compressor on, and we'll watch the suction gauge and see what happens to the suction pressure. So experiment number 1. We're going to turn the pump. So pump number 2 is running, and we're measuring approximately 3 gallons a minute. And suction pressure, the gauge shows about 0 psi, corresponds to a little bit of a suction here. And the discharge pressure is approximately 3 psi. All right, as I close a suction valve, as they say, don't do it at home, we're trained professionals. As I'm closing the suction valve to the pump, watch what happens to the flow rate. The flow rate dropped. Yeah, see Larry, what I'm doing with the handle over here? If I'm opening the suction valve, the flow is restored. Let's look at the valve again on the flow meter. The flow is dropping as soon as I'm closing the valve. And as I did this, the discharge gauge went from 3.5 to about 0, and the suction gauge went to about minus 10 inches of vacuum. All right, open the valve back again. The flow is restored. Immediately, see how quickly the flow changes? 0 to 3 gallons a minute. If we turn the compressor on right now, do a different test. Compressor is on, and now the suction valve, if all valves are fully open, I will begin to close the vent valve, effectively getting more and more vacuum. As I'm closing the vent valve, look what happens to the suction gauge. The suction gauge is dropping. What is it right now? It's about minus 10 psi. I mean inches of vacuum, more or less 20. But take a look at the flow. The flow didn't change. The flow is still 3 gallons a minute. The discharge pressure is about 3.5. Let's do it one more time. Look what I'm doing with the handle. I'm closing the tank, which makes more vacuum. And if you look on the gauge, on the suction side, the gauge is minus 10, minus 20, a lot more than before. If you keep it in this situation for a long time, let's watch the flow meter very carefully. You see how it bubbles? It's developing cavitation. And there's more and more bubbles, but the pump is still not in full cavitation. We still have pretty good 3 gallons a minute. So, the question for you, why is that when we close the valve to a suction with no vacuum, immediately the flow changed. Immediate flow change. And that the suction pressure didn't even get to almost 10 or minus 5 inches of mercury. But when we close a tank vent valve with a vacuum pump running, we could not change the flow at all for a long time, even to the point that the vacuum was almost 25 inches of vacuum. So the question is why? That's what we would like to hear. So send us into the to my email, drpump@pumpingmachinery.com, or call me, or best send me an email, pumpingmachinery.com or drpump@pumpingmachinery.com. The best answer will be published. See you later. Keep on pumping.